I'm Jessica Buja. I'm from Madison, Maine, and I have been diagnosed with CVID. I was diagnosed in 2016. The first time I first started getting sick was in 2004. I had moved from Massachusetts up to Maine, and I ended up getting whooping cough. And initially, they thought it might be my wood stove, and that's why I was coughing. And so it went on of months of coughing, and I finally asked them to check me for whooping cough, and I ended up having it. After that, I seemed to get sick more often, and I thought, oh, they just have superbugs in Maine, and that must be why I'm always getting sick. And then as time went on, I'm a physical therapist, and I work in a nursing home, so it was, I work with lots of sick people. And then I had children, and so it was, kids are in daycare, so I must be catching things that they have. Well, I just seemed to catch everything that they had. So it was a long time of getting sick and being sick. And then the allergies was the other thing that they thought it must be allergies. So eventually, my son is 5 years old now. My daughter is 8. After my son was born, I pretty much had a period of time where I didn't have a period of wellness. And so at that point, they finally sent me to an allergist to see what I was allergic to. And I had no allergies. And that's when they finally checked my immune system. And at that point, all of my sinuses were blocked. So I ended up having in here. And so they did like a roto-rooter surgery and cleared that out, which after that I could breathe, but they had said the testing had come back and I had CVID. So it was odd at first to me because I felt better than I ever had because I could breathe out of my nose, and I was like, well, why do I have to start this treatment? But after the surgery, I ended up getting infected, and things weren't clearing up without antibiotics. And once I started on IVIG, things started to get better from there. Initially, I started on IVIG every 4 weeks, but I was still dropping. So then at that point, they moved it to every 3 weeks. And around that point, I came to my first conference here, and that was in Anaheim. And I talked to lots of other people while I was here, and I figured out that IVIG probably wasn't for me. The sub-Q was going to be a better option. I was, busy working full-time, mom of 2, going to the infusion clinic for a full day was didn't fit into my lifestyle very well. So it was nice to be able to start doing it at home. And right now I do it every 2 weeks. And it was going well. Last summer I had a little snafu. My spleen decided to start growing larger and larger. My platelets started to drop, and my hemoglobin started to drop. I was getting dizzy, low blood pressure, and so I ended up seeing an immunologist in Boston and a hematologist in Boston, who then met with a team of hematologists at Dana-Farber. And that, along with my enlarged lymph nodes, they were concerned because my father had died when he was 24 years old of lymphoma. So they were very concerned at that point that possibly, even though the enlarged spleen is part of CVID and immune deficiencies, that potentially it could be lymphoma or another type of cancer. So with the spleen, they can't do a biopsy because it's filled with blood. So if they biopsy it, it could rupture. So the only way to test it for sure was to take it out. And talking to people here and listening to some of the talks, it's very rare, I guess, that they still take them out. But you know, in some situations, and as some of the speakers talked about, it's usually a last resort. And for the team of doctors in Boston, they decided for me that that was the plan. Luckily, it was cancer-free. So that's the best part of the whole thing. I healed and everything else, no infections at the incision site, and everything went well. And the other nice thing was all my blood levels returned to normal afterwards. So there was a positive piece of it. Even though I had to go through getting the spleen removed, it was very positive. Now I'm kind of back to that, you know, able to get back to activity. I'm back to working full-time as a physical therapist. I run, I'm active with my kids, we ski, you know, all these things. That was one thing they were concerned about with the spleen, is that it could rupture. So I wasn't able to, if they hadn't taken it out, they didn't want me skiing or doing any high-risk activities. So I am now able to resume all of those. And things are going well. I'm working with my doctors and some of the people here this weekend and changing needle size and flow rates and things like that. So it's always a process, but I'm very lucky to have a wonderful husband who's supportive, and my children have learned infusion day is movie day, so they like that. And you know, lots of friends and family that have been there for me, and I really appreciate that. When I was originally diagnosed, I had gone down to Boston and met with an immunologist down there, and they had given me information of things to look up. And the real stories were, that was one of the first things that I looked at, because I didn't know anyone else who had this. And so for me, that was the first time someone else explained all of the things that they had been through. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I went through. And yeah, that was really important for me to hear it from someone else too. And one of the first real stories I had watched, there was someone who had become a marathon runner, or he was a marathon runner and then continued after his diagnosis. And that was really inspiring to me, because before that, I had thought, oh my gosh, like I have this, everything's over. And it was very nice to hear that your life does not have to be over, and that you can still be active and still do things.